Hello and welcome. You're watching the Tracking Signal course PowerShell 3 Essentials. I'm your instructor, Jeff Hicks, and this is the lesson entitled Introduction and Welcome. So I want to introduce myself to you because I will be your tour guide throughout the duration of this course. I am a PowerShell MVP. I write about PowerShell. I train people all over the world about PowerShell. I blog about PowerShell. PowerShell is kind of my life's blood, and I've spent the last 6 years or more, devoted to PowerShell. And so I have a lot of information. I've taught a lot of people, and I'm hoping to impart a lot of that wisdom to you as well. Now, what we're going to find throughout the duration of this course is that PowerShell version 3 builds on top of all the goodness that we had in PowerShell version 2. PowerShell version 3 came out at the end of 2012 with the release of Windows 8 and Windows Server 2012. We can load it on Windows 7, Windows 2008 machines. A lot of great things in version 2. Version 3 takes things even to the next level. In fact, if you're going to be managing things like Windows Server 2012, it's a critical management tool. So learning PowerShell is something that many people have on their to-do list. And in this course, what we're going to do is I'm going to cover the essentials, the things that you need to know today to start using PowerShell right away. There is an enormous amount of information in PowerShell. We're going to be covering the essentials and working with PowerShell as an interactive management tool. We're not necessarily going to cover how to use PowerShell to manage Exchange and SharePoint and SQL. Of course, once you have the foundation, which what I'm hoping this course will give you, you'll find working with those other tools that much easier. So we're going to cover not everything underneath the PowerShell umbrella, but at least enough of the essentials so that you can be effective with PowerShell right away. So to make sure that you are in the right spot, I am assuming that you have some previous experience managing Windows systems, that you understand the difference between a process and a service and know what a file access control list is. If you are totally new to managing Windows, you may find some of the information in this course might be a bit of a struggle, but I'm assuming most of you are probably not going to have that issue. I am assuming that you have very little to no PowerShell experience. If you do, that's great. But I have designed this course so that you basically start it from lesson 1 to the very last lesson. You don't have to. Each of the lessons you could do separately, although I think you'll find towards the end of the course some of the lessons, if you don't do them in the order, you'll be a little confused unless you have some previous PowerShell experience. You just want to see how things work in version 3. But I'm assuming that you're new to PowerShell and you want to know, hey, how do I work with this newfangled thing called PowerShell? Again, the focus is on using not every single feature, but the common features, the things that I think IT pros will use most readily on a daily basis from the command prompt. This is not a scripting course, although we will look at some PowerShell scripting in the last part of the course. But don't assume that you're going to have to sit and learn how to write scripts. That's not what this course is all about. This course is about teaching you the PowerShell language, the paradigm, and then how to work with that in an interactive basis, which is the way I think most people will be using PowerShell. So to follow along in the course, if you would like to, there are some requirements, of course. Obviously, you need to have some system that is running PowerShell version 3. So it can be Windows 8, Windows Server 2012, which ship with PowerShell installed automatically, or you can download and install PowerShell version 3, say on a Windows 7 desktop. That would be an ideal situation. I'm going to assume that you are running in a domain environment with admin credentials. Now, certainly, if you're going to be following along, you should not be doing anything that I'm going to show you in a production environment. You should be having some sort of test environment. So have some sort of system that you can experiment with so that if for some reason you make a mess of things, hopefully none of my things will lead you to that, but if you do, you've got something that you can roll back and experiment with without too much negative impact. Ideally, you'll also have access to a second computer that is also running PowerShell version 3. That'll come in handy when we get to some of the remoting features. And I think you'll find Windows 8 with Hyper-V is an ideal learning platform. In fact, that's what I'm going to be using in my test environment, is I have a Windows 8 box with my test domain all running in Hyper-V so that I can easily test things back and forth. So that might be something you might want to consider as well. Now, in terms of the setup, what I have anyway, and you can follow some of this as much as you want, I do have a Windows 8 desktop, and that's where I'll be doing most of my demonstrations. Because you don't have to go to servers to do things. You can manage a lot of your Windows infrastructure right from the Windows 8 desktop or some machine running PowerShell version 3. So I've got a client. I do have a Windows Server 2012 domain controller. I also have an R2 domain controller running Server Core that has PowerShell version 3, and a second one with PowerShell version 2. Again, the domain controllers, not that I'm necessarily have to have that sort of stuff. I want to, at some point, you'll be able to see differences between version 2 and version 3, so I just happen to have a mix here. And I also have in my test environment a variety of other servers running things like Exchange and SQL. Some of them are running PowerShell version 2, some are running PowerShell version 3. So I've tried to create a test environment that kind of is representative of kind of a usual environment that most of you probably are running. You'll have some mix of domain controllers, some mix of member servers. Some things might be running version 2, some might be running version 3. So that's kind of what I have here. The more that you can come up with that kind of mixed environment, I think the richer your training experience will be. Now, as you work through this course, you're going to find that some of the lessons will have lab exercises. At the end, I'll have 3 or 4 little exercises, little challenges for you to try to figure out based on the material in that lesson. My hope is that this will reinforce some concepts or techniques that I've covered in that. I've got a lot of demonstrations which you can use, hopefully which will guide you to figure out, okay, how do I solve this little problem that Jeff has given me? The solutions, if you need them, are available in the lesson file download. As you're working through the lesson, some of the lessons you may see a button talking about downloading lesson files. The solutions will be in that download, as well as all of the demo commands. My courses tend to have a lot of demonstrations, so you'll see a lot of PowerShell commands in action. So that lesson file will also include that material. That material, those demos, what you'll get will be text files. They're not meant to be PowerShell scripts that you run start to finish. They're basically just a list of the commands that you can then copy and paste or study as you need them. Now, I do have kind of a scenario that we're going to try to structure this course around. It helps reinforce that we're not learning something in a vacuum. So, to help put you in the mood here, you, the person viewing this, are a network administrator, a Windows IT pro in the Chicago office of the Globomantics company. That Globomantics company has a couple domain controllers in Chicago, an Exchange server, a SQL server, file server, basically those things that we saw in the lab setup. The company has decided that Windows Server 2012 will be deployed over the course of the next year, and you need to learn PowerShell. The company has decided, you know what, PowerShell is the management tool that we need to embrace because it's going to save us money, make us more efficient, and give us a competitive advantage. And so your goal is to learn PowerShell because you're going to need it to manage Server 2012. And you understand that if you want to advance in the company, you need to make sure you have a strong PowerShell 3 skill set. And I'm hoping that that's what this course will give you. So, are you ready? If you are, hopefully you'll fire up your PowerShell 3 session, get a notepad handy, something to drink, and go through these lessons. Again, the more you can follow from start to finish, I think the better off you'll be, unless you have some previous experience. So, that is it for the introduction. Thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next lesson, and we will get this started.